This is Nan McKay, and I would like to introduce you today to Brooke Kekos. Now, as a founder of Life Goddess Coaching, Brooke specializes in comprehensive relationship management. She chose this field because of the lifelong trauma that she sustained in her upbringing within a real domineering religious sect. And after 35 years of indoctrination, Brooke opted to proceed with a different life path that aligns with her core values, despite the grave consequences of her actions by leaving, which included painfully being shunned by her family and close friends. Brooke not only persevered, but more importantly, was inspired to dedicate her expertise toward relieving the suffering of other individuals and helping them start their own journey back to health and well-being. So welcome, Brooke.
Thank you. Thank you, Nan, for having me here.
You have really experienced the cycle of abuse and trauma from a religious sect with an abusive father to an abusive husband. So tell us your story.
Yeah, well, thank you. I have definitely been on the path of suffering for sure, I would have to say. But, it started out with not really realizing that that's what was going on for me, obviously, right? Because I didn't realize that, we can get so clouded, we have tunnel vision, right? Because of our belief system, right? It's how we are raised. And I didn't really have a choice, right? I didn't have a choice in my upbringing. I was born into a religion that was then made to become my belief. And it's funny because I always didn't, I would always question things and I would always say, this doesn't make sense. And, obviously they always try to say, no, it makes sense. They try to, yeah, you're not allowed to go and look outside of the religion. Okay. So they keep you very controlled. You don't look outside, you don't look at publications, you don't read other religions publications, you don't read anything about anything because they want you to stay trapped, right? They want to keep you in control. So not knowing that, right? And then being also raised in a very toxic, dysfunctional family, having the narcissistically abusive father that I did that really made me feel as if I was never enough, right? I constantly was feeling as if there was just something missing for me. And, I'd not having my needs met as a child emotionally really made me become rebellious because I didn't, I knew something wasn't right. I knew I wasn't being treated right. I didn't want to conform to the rules and the control and manipulation that was not only in the religion, but by my father as well. And so very authoritarian. And if I didn't, it became abusive and there was rage and there was anger and it just really led me to live this life of being in fight or flight and not even realizing that I was constantly in a trauma response and trying to cope with the surroundings that I was in. And that, of course, led me to get trapped into an abusive relationship because it was my familiar, right? It was all I had known. It was something that was just so normal for me that I had this belief that love hurts, right? Love is hard, okay? And that it didn't matter. Like I was supposed to make it work. I had to make it work. I had to sacrifice my wants and needs. And it just repeated the cycle of codependency for me. And also just not realizing that I was even being abused and not even knowing what a real healthy relationship was supposed to look or feel like. And I think that's why so many women get trapped in such a situation, right? And also the religion also told me that, divorce was bad. God didn't love divorce and, all of these things. And it was very strict that way. And so I just had this belief like, I can't leave, right? And if I do leave, that, a lot of fear came in and whatnot. But then in 2017, my then husband found out that the religion was a hoax. It was a sham. And realizing that we were being controlled for so long and that things were not adding up, the more research outside of the religion that we did, and actually becoming a critical thinker, because that's what they kind of take away from you. They don't want you to be a critical thinker and actually have your own beliefs, think for yourself. They just want to program you. They want you to believe what you're supposed to believe. And when he started to discover that that's just not the case whatsoever, and he started to discover child abuse cases that were being covered up by the religion and not being properly dealt with, that was just like, I started to believe what he was saying. And I started to dig deeper for myself, because I said, okay, something's not right here. And so I left. And then I realized I was also in an abusive relationship, because that kind of led me to start to do my own digging of what's really going on here for me, and seeing for what it was. And so I left the religion, and the marriage ended at the same time. And so that was really a very traumatic space for me, because I didn't know who I was. I completely lost my identity in one fell swoop. And that was scary for me, really scary for me. And with that, I kind of started my healing journey. And I started to see that, I was like having extreme emotional flashbacks. And at the time, I didn't really realize it was PTSD. I had complex PTSD from years of trauma, from years of abuse, and not even realizing it. And once I started doing the therapy, my therapist is kind of helping me to kind of sift through the wreckage, if you will. And once I did that, I was like, okay, this is what's going on for me. And I started to heal. But my ex-husband at the time, unfortunately, did the opposite, because a lot of people that leave this religious sect really suffer. A lot of them are really depressed. A lot of them lose their, because they lose their identity. They don't know what to believe anymore. They don't have any faith. They don't know what to believe in God or what, and they lose themselves. So there's a lot of suicide. There's, they don't really get out of the low feelings of not knowing who they are and what they should believe anymore. And that's kind of what happened for him. And so he kind of turned to drugs to kind of, patch that. And that unfortunately led to him overdosing in 2020. And that's really what ignited me even more to heal, because the grief and seeing my children grieve was just so difficult for me that I was like, okay, I need to change everything all over again and heal on a deeper level.
Let me clarify some things. Did you meet your husband while you were in the sect? It sounds like you did.
I did, yeah. I actually, it's a very long story. We could make a movie out of it, to be honest. But, I met him actually when I was 15 years old. He was in the religion as well. And when you're in the religion, you're kind of pressed to marry young, because you can't have sex before marriage, right? And we ended up having sex before marriage. And when you do that, you are disfellowshipped for a period of time. So you get shunned, right? You don't get to talk to your friends. That was a traumatic experience in itself when I was 16 years old, because I wasn't able to talk to anybody, and I had to just like live this really reclusive life for a period of time until I was allowed back into the religion. And then once that happened and I so-called repented after a year, I was able to talk to my friends again. But then, that just led to this feeling of my parents not wanting me to be with him. And they wanted so badly, like they put a restraining order against him, and they were trying to control the situation even more. And so I ended up just completely, eloping with him when I was 18, because I wanted to get out of my family situation so badly, because that was so like my father was just trying to control everything and control me. It was a natural instinct, right? When you're trying to be controlled so much and you're being told what to do and who you're supposed to be, you automatically are like, I have to break free from this. This is not normal. Something's not right. I just didn't realize really what it was at the time.
So what did repenting require?
So repenting meant that you had to serve your time, if you will, and you had usually about 6 months to a year of not being allowed to be talked to. You would arrive at the church. You wouldn't be talked to for a period of, ever. People wouldn't even look at you. It's like you didn't exist inside or outside of the church. And once you finally wrote a letter to what the elders, they call them, then the elders decide or they say that God decides if I've really repented or not, and if I can be let back in.
Interesting. Now, were you still in the religious sect when you got married?
Yes, yes. So we were actually in the religion for a very long time. We were married almost 17 years, and we were in the religion that whole time. I think that my ex-husband was very, I think there was a part of him that always didn't believe fully if it was real, but there was a part of him that thought it was very real too, because, it's a fear-based religion. So there's so much fear that they put into you, and that's how they control you, right? With fear. And I think he was just so afraid that if he didn't do what he was supposed to do, he wasn't going to make it into what they call the paradise. And they think that's what they're working for. Like, they're not really truly living. They're just they're doing what they're supposed to be doing right now. And they think that on the other side, they're going to, they're going to make it if they do just what they're told.
Did you have your children then while you were in the sect?
I did. Yes, I did. Mm-hmm.
And how did you reconcile, your concerns about needing freedom? Is this the right choice? Am I here? With raising your children? how'd that work?
You mean if after I left?
No, while you were in it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, while I was in it, I actually believed it. Right?
Okay. So you
yeah,
taught
I wholeheartedly
children.
I taught my children. I thought, yes, I was very, very indoctrinated. I was very programmed. I believed everything. Even though I questioned some things, I still believed it and thought that if I didn't do it, I was going to be destroyed. So I did what I was told, right? And I tried to excel at it, but there was just this something inside of me that was always like, I don't know, this doesn't make sense. I was very stubborn with certain aspects of the religion, because how they shunned people. Having been shunned before, I didn't believe that was okay. I felt that was so harsh and unloving. And it's like, they tell you it's loving, and I'm like, how is that loving? I mean, you're making somebody feel like they're so alone. They're all by themselves out in that big wide world. And I think that was so traumatizing for me as a young girl. I had to process a lot of that in therapy, for sure.
Now, I'm envisioning that this was kind of a commune. Am I right? In a sense that you were all living together?
No, so it wasn't. It was it was a smaller religion. It was Jehovah's Witnesses. So for anybody that, knows of Jehovah's Witnesses, you don't celebrate holidays. It's a very strict religion. It is, they have their own belief and system, right? And they think that their belief system is the only one that is the right one in everywhere, all the world. They think that this is it.
So what part of the country were you in at the time?
I was in Colorado.
Okay, I was going to ask if it was Utah, but it was Colorado. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that would be Mormons. I mean, Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses, even though they don't really know, a lot of people don't know the background of it. Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons are very similar. They actually are a break off of that same sect, and they just don't realize it.
Interesting.
You do the history.
So
yeah.
At what point did you decide to leave, you and your husband and your children? At what point did you decide to do something else or break away? And how did you talk about it a lot beforehand, or how'd you make the decision to go?
Oh yeah, we talked about it so much. We thought about it because, like I said, my ex-husband was the one that came to me at the time and said that there was child abuse cases going on, and that the Jehovah's Witnesses what they call the governing body, were lying in court, that there was cover-ups, all of this stuff. And I didn't believe him at first, honestly. I was like, oh, that's not true. I had really bad cognitive dissonance because I was so, it was ingrained in me to stand up for that religion, obviously. And so I just told him he was crazy. And I was like, there's no way. And he started to show me like things that they had, publications that they had printed out that didn't match up with actual biblical history, like kind of they basically, they make up their own doctrination to how they want it to go, right? How they want people to believe so that they can create this life that people need to lead so that they can keep them controlled, right? It's all a money making business, right? And being able to just control the masses. And once I started to do my own research, that is when I said, oh, okay, maybe he's not lying here. Actually watching what was going on in these child abuse cases in Australia and other parts of the world, actually watching, the truth and seeing what is really going on behind the scenes. And then, starting to do my own research, my own biblical research to kind of add everything up. And then I just said, oh, okay, this doesn't make sense anymore to me. And so that's when I was really, really tough, because then all my whole reality, my whole life was all of a sudden, it was just, I didn't know what to believe. I was very lost.
And how did you actually pull out? I mean, what physically did you do?
So a lot of people in that religion have to actually say that that's what they're doing, and then they'll get announced in the church so that people will call them apostate, if you will, because if you go against the church, you're automatically out, right? You are like basically not okay. No one will talk to you. It's not, it's bad. It's very bad. It looks bad on you. I quietly left because there was no way I was going to go in and talk about anything, because it didn't matter. It didn't matter anymore. I didn't care, because I knew what was my truth, and I knew that this wasn't my truth anymore. And I needed to go and do research and find my own belief system and really discover what that looked like for myself.
So when your husband died suddenly of addiction, what did that ignite in you?
So that really ignited an awakening for me, honestly, a true awakening, because I had said, I don't really believe in God or anything higher at that point. I kind of just threw my hands up, and I guess I was kind of angry, to be honest. And so, but when he died and the grief was so extreme and so painful, I kind of was just like, there's no way that we just walk this earth and there's just nothing, right? There's just nothing. And so I didn't necessarily pray. I didn't call out. It was just like, I literally was just so desperate to understand and know, like, okay, really what did happen to him? And, what is going on? And I really just found the answers, to be honest. I felt like I was just really divinely guided and had this awakening to really show me what is truth and what is not truth, and how I can have my own belief system, and I can discover, and I can be curious, and I can see that, people were coming with me with answers that made sense, that actually made sense. And really starting to see that, okay, I need to change, my course. I need to heal deeply within myself, because I was really being shown that I needed to heal more deeply and understand myself more, understand how my brain works, understand, what is consciousness. So how do we become conscious, more conscious people of our lives, and not operate in autopilot? And that was really shown to me in my healing journey. And every mentor just showed up in my life at the exact time I needed it. Every spiritual teacher showed up in my life just when I needed it. And I was like, well, there's just no way that this happened by chance, right? I asked and I received, and it really just helped me to heal more greatly.
And then you really started to dig into or educate yourself, right?
Yes. Yes.
And tell us a little bit about what the studies were that you did that is now leading to where you are today.
Oh gosh, I've done a lot of studying, to be honest. I went back to school. I studied spiritual teachings. I studied all other forms of religion. I found what really made sense for me. I also began to really get into the modern mystics, if you will. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Neville Goddard, but starting to really see kind of what our subconscious mind is, what the Bible is all about, what the Bible really is, and what the metaphoric teachings that are within the Bible, what they really mean for us, and what they're actually here to help us understand. And once it all kind of came together after I had done so much learning, it made sense. It was so simple. We as humans had complicated the Bible. We have complicated the Bible so much so that now we have multiple religions that make up their own thing to control society, right? Just like the social, like just like media controls, like all of those things, they made that kind of stuff up, right? And granted, there's always this message in religion is like, be kind, be good to people, do all of these things, which is great messages, right? It makes us better humans.
Yeah.
So not saying anything bad about religion. It's just about, for everybody, it's different. Now, religions that actually hurt and abuse and control people, that's different. That's not okay. That's not okay, right? Because that's when people are abused and controlled and have trauma and have depression because they don't understand. They don't really understand what's going on.
And then how did you get into neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, and how did you get into some of those areas?
Yeah. So I studied RTT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, and NLP, so neuro-linguistic programming. So that's really rewiring the brain. And in my studies of doing that and learning how to be a hypnotherapist, I understood how the subconscious mind really works and how we operate, right? And how most of the time we are operating from our trauma or things that happen in childhood when we are actually seeing and understanding the world around us. And that's when our brain is taking in all this information, retaining it, storing it, filing it. And then it's, kind of like, oh, okay, we got it. We've got the world figured out, right? And, and then you get older and all of a sudden you're wondering, oh my God, why am I acting like my mother? Well, because you're operating from a space because you were modeled that behavior as a child. So in our subconscious mind, it remembers, right? And remembers how it thinks you should operate. But most of the time, these are things that are limiting us or they're not serving us anymore because it's stuff from the past. It's stuff from the past.
So segue now into your business and how you use all of this to help other people.
Yeah, so I use this mostly to help other people heal from trauma and abuse, obviously. It really helps them get through the trauma that's been stored in the mind and the body, right? Our body always remembers, even if our mind doesn't. It helps them remove that and really break free from the things that are limiting them, because we actually can be limitless beings and conscious creators of our lives. It's about what's going on in our subconscious mind that's limiting us. How abusive are we talking to ourselves every day? Because these are repetitive things that we say every day to ourselves. And then just removing that, rewiring it, and moving someone towards a more positive and healthy life.
So what are, let's say, 3 takeaways or gifts that you can give others who are in this cycle?
Yeah, so you're going to be unaware of it. Anybody that is in this cycle is not going to know they're in this cycle because I didn't. I had no idea, right? I was in the abuse cycle for a very, very long time, extremely unaware, unconscious of anything that was happening. And so what I always tell people is that if there is this part of you, this intuitive part, we are all intuitive by nature. Okay, sometimes it's just clouded by the trauma and life. But if there's this intuitive piece in you and you feel like something's not right, dig deeper, look deeper. Don't just push it to the side and say, whatever, I'm not going to worry about it today. No, dig deeper. And then I would also say, if you are suffering from a relationship that is really unhappy, right? Or you're not feeling like your best version of yourself, there's something not right there as well. Start to say, okay, what's going on here? How do I need to educate myself to see, maybe I need to become more aware of maybe what kind of relationship I'm in, or how are things not happy and joyful for me? And then also I would say, get a really good support system. If you are in that type of dynamic, or if you have suffered abuse from religion, or you are trying to overcome something, support. We try to do everything alone because we think that we have to. And support, I think, is the biggest gift, because that's what it is. Community. We're humans, and we are meant for connection and community.
Well, it's really been interesting talking with you, Brooke. You know, you have such an unusual background, and yet probably not so unusual. We probably just don't realize how much of it is going on. So is there anything else you'd like to add before we leave?
I just always tell people, if you heal your mind, you really truly can change your life. We kind of focus so much on the physical, right? On our outward appearance, on the outside of us, but actually we need to be focusing on the inner. And that's really what is going on in our mind, what's happening for us, because that's really our superpower.
And how can people contact you?
I have a website. It's lifecoachinggoddess.com. I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. They can contact me there. We can always have a chat, and I would love to talk to anybody if they're needing some help and guidance.
Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And I hope that everybody that feels that need can find you.